Are you serious, Drew?
What? Well, geez, what's the problem?
People are still mourning my death after the launch of the iPhone 14, and you already want to talk about the iPhone 15?
Well, I know it's a ways out, but it does actually correlate to the iPhone 14 a bit. You know, if you just...
I'm beginning to think you didn't really care about mini iPhones in the first place.
That's not true, Mini Drew. I absolutely did. I just really needed 120 hertz.
Oh yeah? So if Apple made a Pro mini iPhone with 120 hertz, you would buy that one instead of the Pro Max, right?
I mean...
You don't care about having extra battery life, right? That's why you were comfortable getting the 12 mini?
Yeah, now that I have the extra battery, it has been kind of nice, you know, like on occasion.
Ugh, I can't believe your hypocrisy. Why do you want to talk about the iPhone 15 already?
Well, because a lot of people are thinking to themselves, should I buy the iPhone 14 or should I wait for the 15? It impacts today's buying decision.
You have your stupid logic this time, but it won't work for long.
All right, fine. Mini iPhone, we're probably not seeing you next year anyway.
What was that?
Nothing. I just said that I hope the Plus iPhones flop and Apple decides to bring you back.
Oh, they will. I'm sure they will. Whether it's an SE or a Mini, I'll be back, I promise.
Okay, let's begin. I know it probably does feel very premature to already be talking about the iPhone 15, but like I mentioned in the skit, yeah, like, it is a genuine question a lot of people are wondering, and honestly, it's coming up a lot when people are thinking to themselves, do I want to upgrade this year, or is there something big I could get with the iPhone 15 series? And the truth is, when it's this far in advance, no one knows what the iPhone 15 is gonna have. Even Apple doesn't know, because there's still a lot of development going on, so don't trust any leaker that says that this is the iPhone 15 design or this is totally what it's gonna look like, because these leaks far in advance are usually never very specific, but there are little tech specs and little clues that tend to end up being accurate even 12 months in advance. But you gotta take everything with a gigantic grain of salt. But yes, Ming-Chi Kuo has alluded to the idea that Apple is testing USB-C iPhones for next year, but I also just think it would make a lot of sense for Apple from a marketing perspective. It is much easier to upsell people on a USB-C iPhone. You can brag about faster data transfer speeds, especially with ProRes and 1 terabyte iPhones. It would make a lot of sense to bring USB-C or Thunderbolt to the iPhone. You can brag about faster charging speeds. You can brag about a wider selection of accessories it's compatible with. And if you go portless, you just have the giant amount of e-waste created by all lightning cables, whereas you can easily convert any lightning cable into a USB-C cable. You can't convert any lightning cable easily into a MagSafe puck. It's just not that simple with the inefficiencies of wireless charging. And also, the portless argument is not going to hold up too well when there are many large demographics out there that are beginning to decide whether or not they want to enforce USB-C as a required standard for smartphones. And this has only grown as time has gone on. The EU is talking about doing it and enforcing it in around 2024, so next year is probably when Apple would want to start launching USB-C iPhones. Brazil is also looking at passing legislation about this, as is India. And these are not small demographics. These are not countries that Apple wants to be banned from selling new iPhones from, which is why, again, nothing is confirmed, something could change, Apple could pull a stupid, but there's a lot of reason to believe that USB-C might come to the entire iPhone 15 lineup, especially if it's from governmental pressure. That means that there's no real reason that you would put USB-C on the Pro iPhones but leave Lightning on the regular iPhones. No, if those laws end up getting passed, which it sounds like a lot of them are, you want USB-C on all iPhones as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be banned from selling hardware in that country. So I'm saying there's a growing likelihood of USB-C coming to the iPhone 15 lineup, but I wouldn't say at this point anything is 100% for sure. Mark Gurman has also discussed a lot about Apple moving towards bringing the Ultra terminology to the iPhone 15 lineup, but no one really wants to extrapolate on what Ultra in the iPhone line really means. Does that mean adding a crown guard and titanium chassis to the iPhone, or is that just marketing lingo to replace the Pro Max terminology, which frankly, I don't think is a bad idea at all. Even if just what we believe is the 15 Pro Max ends up being called the 15 Ultra, that would probably get a lot more people talking about the new iPhone if they were like, oh, have you heard about the new Ultra iPhone? This one's kind of interesting. Plus, it would align a little bit with the Samsung Ultra terminology, because this is another rumor, and again, it is still a rumor for the iPhone 15 line, that Apple's been in talks with suppliers for a long time to adopt a periscope lens on the iPhone, but you notice with the Galaxy phones, they don't put the periscope lenses on the smaller models. Because the periscope lens takes up a lot of horizontal space in a smartphone, and Apple is thinking about adding that, which basically just means a very far optical zoom. Whether it's a 10x or a 20x zoom, it's something that zooms a lot more than the 3x we're currently getting on our iPhones. But it may not be so easy to stuff that periscope lens into the smaller 6.1-inch iPhone. So if we are returning to having camera exclusives to the larger size variants, it might make sense to rebrand around then, because then you can say, you know, iPhone 15 Ultra has the best camera ever in an iPhone, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro is, yeah, it's a good camera. Nothing too shabby about it, but you're just not going to get that periscope lens technology in that model because it's already hard enough for them to stuff the current camera bump in the 6.1-inch model. Once you start pushing a periscope lens in that, yeah, no, MagSafe is just going to fall apart or your battery's going to take a big hit. But one thing that I feel very confident about, because it just sounds so much like Apple and it's from a very trustworthy source, Ross Young, is that Apple wants to bring the dynamic island to all iPhone 15s, even the non-Pros, which makes sense to me. It's the headlining feature of the 14 Pros, but next year is going to be another incremental upgrade, another refinement on the lineup, and it's a very easy thing for them to just bring the dynamic island down, which does mean we can say the iPhone 15 lineup will probably not have any notches or static peninsulas, as much as you guys love me to call them that. But unfortunately, Ross Young still thinks that the regular iPhone 15 and 15 Plus will be rocking 60 Hz displays, not 90 Hz, not 120 Hz. I hope that changes, because I do love myself a good buttery refresh rate, but I do think Apple's probably in the right that the everyday consumer that those phones are catered towards just either doesn't notice or doesn't care about that kind of refresh rate. A lot of us techies go gaga for that stuff, and Apple knows it, so that's why they put it on the more expensive options, and I know it drives all of you Android fanboys nuts knowing that there's $400 Androids with 120 Hz, but there's probably going to be a $900 iPhone in 2023 that still has 60 Hz. I know. It kills you inside, but what should kill you inside more is the fact that that iPhone that you hate is going to outsell every single $400 Android that has 120 Hz. So that just says a lot about how much software matters than the hardware, but Dynamic Island is a pretty flashy new feature that grabs a lot of attention by the mainstream, so bringing that to the cheaper iPhone seems like a no-brainer to make the new iPhone lineup look fresh and unique. And I imagine in this particular case, because Apple wants the flagship A series of chips to remain in the higher-end iPhones, the iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Ultra, whatever they call it, is probably going to get the A17 chip, whereas the regular iPhone 15 and 15 Plus will get the A16 chip. So now that we've had this awkward middle year where 2 generations of iPhone had to have the A15 chip, it should feel a lot easier moving forward to know that each iPhone will be getting technically a newer A series of chip. It's just that the Pro or Ultra iPhones will get the newer chip. But yeah, this would mean iPhone 14 to 15 does get a chip upgrade, but ultimately A16 isn't crazy fast anyway. But at least the number's higher, right? That's all we care about in the end. And a lot of you may be wondering, like, well, Drew, if the 14 Plus is not selling that well, why doesn't Apple release an iPhone 15 mini, right? Because the mini may be selling better than the Plus was, even if the mini was not selling at the extreme volume they expected. Personally, I just want to remind you guys that changing sizes in the lineup is usually a pretty big deal for Apple, and they typically like to give some time for new form factors in the lineup. Like, we had the iPhone XR, and then we had the iPhone 11 before they updated the chassis. And even when the iPhone 12 mini launched, there were lots of reports about the 12 mini not selling too well, and I was hoping that over time that would change, and it really didn't. But you notice, even though the 12 mini had kind of lackluster success, they still released the 13 mini, right? They gave it another shot. They tried to redeem itself the following year. It didn't, unfortunately, change much for the sales of the mini iPhone, but I'm guessing that Apple has to wait around 2 years before they make giant size changes like that between models. So even if the 14 Plus doesn't sell very well at all, which I'm personally guessing they're okay with because it's more of a decoy model to encourage you to get the Pro, even if it's a big flop, I think they will probably still have a Plus iPhone with the 15 line. Ross Young has said nothing about the mini iPhone coming back, so even if they do decide to bring back the mini, you're probably not going to see a flagship one until the iPhone 16 series. But in the meantime, hopefully we get some type of smaller SE iPhone that's more affordable but also somewhat small. That would be nice to see. Apple also bought out Intel's modem business years ago with their intention of making their own in-house design antennas for 5G and everything. It's still kind of up in the air on when this is going to be ready. Certain analysts are saying that it's not going to be ready until 2024, but for the longest time we were expecting it to be ready by 2023. That was the original original target launch date when Apple acquired Intel's modem business. So maybe if things go better than expected, we could get Apple in-house design modems, which should just mean better efficiency, better battery life, all kinds of great benefits of Apple having more control over the components on the inside. But because of the rumored delays surrounding the modem business, don't be surprised if that gets pushed to the iPhone 16 series. And I'm sure across the board, there's gotta be camera upgrades, you know, the front-facing camera, the rear-facing camera, even on the regular iPhone 15s. Hopefully, this will be the year that they bring macro mode to the non-pros. I was really upset and annoyed that the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus didn't get macro mode. It would also make sense to finally bring ProRes recording to the regular iPhones as well. I don't know why they feel like they need to software lock that out of the regular iPhones, but yeah, no crazy reports so far about like titanium iPhones or giant changes to the camera design on the back. However, if that periscope lens rumor does end up happening, you better imagine that that's around the time Apple would have to redesign the camera bump on the back, because the periscope lens takes up a lot of space, and I'm not so sure it could easily fit within the current stovetop 3 camera design, and they may have to tweak it to something else. I would suggest just straight up copying the Pixel 6 and 7 camera bump design, because that eliminates the wobble while allows for a much larger camera bump space. But it's gonna be a fun year of leaks and rumors, and I'm excited to dive into everything that people are saying, both the stuff that I don't think is true and the stuff that I do think is true. Every year, you get a bit of both. And if anything in this video sounds like a game-changing feature, like yes, I absolutely want to try that on my next iPhone, and you're still pretty happy with your current iPhone, then yeah, it may be worth the wait. But ultimately, a lot of people said similar things about the iPhone 14 line when the iPhone 13 series dropped. Oh no, man, the iPhone 14 series is gonna be way bigger. That's the big redesign. That's when they change everything, right? And then it comes out and it's like, yeah, oh, it's not that different ultimately. But Apple has had the stovetop design since 2019. It would feel kind of appropriate for them to finally change it a little bit with the 2023 iPhone. Usually camera bump designs don't last that long in the iPhone lineup, but I don't think you should expect any drastic changes to the chassis, because Apple had a very rounded, curved off chassis with the iPhone 6 in 2014, and they didn't change that until 2020 with the iPhone 12. So 6 years of that rounded chassis approach, and I think we'll probably get at least another 5 to 6 years of the squared off edge design. So I don't think you'll get any giant, super noticeable redesigns next year, but that's ultimately just the norm with smartphone upgrades now. But what are you guys most looking forward to? What would convince you to upgrade to the iPhone 15? Are some of you already sold on it? Like, I don't care what they do with it, I know I'm buying it. All those addictions, let me know what you got down in the comments below. This is your Alp Sheep here, and I'll see you all in the next one.